Sony have wrapped up their E3 conference, and I think overall it was very good. There were two really good surprises, two things we had no idea. There were no leaks beforehand, no clue they were coming, great surprises. I don't think it was the best Sony conference we've ever seen, but I think it was definitely good, definitely a good show, and yeah, I think it did a good job to compete with Microsoft. Whether it was as good, better, not as good, that's kind of up to you. But I think it was definitely a good show. I think PlayStation gamers have a lot to look forward to, and we're given some good content to check out last night. Sony kicked off their conference by showing gameplay footage of Days Gone, a new IP that was announced at last year's E3, which has a very kind of Last of Us type vibe, and is basically set in a zombie apocalypse, where, you know, your classic zombie apocalypse we've seen a million times. But, you know, it really has a kind of gritty, kind of Last of Us vibe. You seem to play as a kind of a guy from a motorbike gang who has kind of hooked up with some survivors. And exactly what the overall story is, the characters, the quest, we're still not clear, but we got to see some gameplay of it last night, and it looks great. I mean, it really, you know, some serious work has gone into that. It's by Sony Santa Monica, you know, they have a great rep of past games, so you'd expect real quality. The footage showed a guy infiltrating an enemy's camp, if you like, and first of all, we got to see pretty standard stealth mechanics we've seen in other games like Horizon Zero Dawn or Assassin's Creed, but, you know, just really well polished, very well done. It looked as though it was very responsive. The character then was able to use sound to get zombies to attack his enemies, and you know, there's this element of strategy there where you know, you can use your environment, you know, enemies that might be problematic for you, you can turn on other enemies and help clear your path. And I think that was a really interesting gameplay mechanic. I look forward to seeing how that works out. The most impressive thing we saw of the game, though, was just the sheer number of NPCs on screen at one time. You've never seen a zombie horde like it in a video game. You know, just, I mean, I think at one point there was possibly up to like 100 NPCs on screen, each doing their own thing, just this horde of zombies like running and charging at the enemy and taking them over, and then the enemy trying to fight them off while the main character snuck off. I mean, you know, like, there's some serious power going behind that, and games in the past like Assassin's Creed Unity struggled with having dense crowds of people, but from what we've seen with this game, you know, a lot of effort has gone into making sure that it remains smooth and realistic, and yeah, it was very impressive. I mean, the way Sony showed it off, they had obviously the huge screen on the stage, and then there was like real people performing and hanging from the ceiling and stuff to represent zombies that have been hung up in the game, and it was like, you know, not so much for the people watching at home, but for the people at E3, there was almost like a show going on alongside the presentation. I thought that was a nice touch, you know. Yeah, so I mean, as I said, it has a very Last of Us vibe. I wonder if it's maybe set in the same universe as The Last of Us. That probably isn't the case, because it's not made by Naughty Dog, Sony Santa Monica. But as I say, it has a very Naughty Dog vibe to it, very Last of Us vibe. I feel like The Last of Us and Days Gone will have a lot of crossover fans, so I mean, we'll see, but it definitely looks really good. We saw a zombie bear at the end. That's something I've never really seen in a zombie, any kind of zombie media, like the virus infecting animals as well as humans. So it looks like it won't just be your regular zombie people you have to watch out for. Nature itself is also going to be a problem. Next up, we got a very surprise announcement. I had no inkling this was going to be shown. Monster Hunter World. Now, I've never played a Monster Hunter game, to my sins, but I've heard great things about them. They look very good, and traditionally they've been on handhelds. I think there was a Monster Hunter game on the 3DS and one on the PSP, and I think it's great to see it come to a main console that's got some real power behind it, because what we saw looked fantastic. I mean, in a game where you're going to be fighting monsters, you want, you know, a spectacle. You want to see big monsters coming at you and looking great. And from what we saw, it looked really good. It looked very customizable. The way you attack monsters, you can take items from them and crafting components and upgrade armor and stuff. The combat looked interesting. There was a bit where the player used stealth for a while to get in position behind a monster, and then jumped up and sort of grappled onto it rather than just start hacking at its legs. Yeah, I mean, I'm very intrigued as someone who's kind of admired Monster Hunter from afar. I look forward to jumping in with this, and I think it will do a lot to draw in new players. And yeah, definitely one to watch out for. Absolutely. Next up, we had possibly the most exciting E3 announcement, personally for me, Shadow of the Colossus Remake. How amazing is that? Shadow of the Colossus is one of my favourite games from the PS2 era. I played it originally on the PS2. I played the PS3 version. They released the HD version. And, you know, the problem with Shadow of the Colossus was it was so ambitious and it had so many ideas and its scale was so grand. It was kind of too much for the PS2 back in the day. It looked very nice, but the frame rate used to drop terribly. And kind of Shadow of the Colossus fans have always looked back at that game and kind of thought, as great as it was, and it was fantastic, it would have been good maybe if it had been released perhaps on the PS3, because then it would have had more power behind it to have these huge colossi, and, you know, it just would have been a bit more stable overall. So the idea that they're remaking it from the ground up for the PS4 is fantastic. I mean, it's like you know, I'm surprised they're doing this, because usually they don't do that with games. You know, I mean, we'd all like to see, I don't know, something like I don't know, but games just, companies don't tend to literally remake a game. You have ports, and you have things like the Halo anniversary and such, but this really seems like a labour of love rather than something they think will really, you know, make a huge amount of money or something. But absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited for that. I'm curious to see if this does well. Does that mean there could be a possibility that Ico, the first game from Team Ico, will be remastered or remade? I'd definitely be interested in that. I love Ico. And I think that's great, and I think partly the confidence that Sony has in bringing Shadow of the Colossus to the PS4 is the success of The Last Guardian, and how players embrace that despite such a long development period. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled about that. I'm curious to know whether there'll be any extra content in the PS4 version. Will it literally be a shot-for-shot remake of the PS2 version, or will there be some extra things in there for veteran players? Will there be new colossi, maybe new areas to explore? I would hope that, at least as far as perhaps controls go, or gameplay in general, it's tweaked slightly to reflect modern gaming, because, you know, as much as I love Shadow of the Colossus, and I really do, it's of its time. It was released in 2005. Gaming has come a long way since then, and that's over a decade ago. So, you know, I expect that perhaps the controls will be a bit smoother and a bit more what we're used to nowadays. But yeah, I mean, I'm pumped for that. I'm so excited. And it said it has a release window of 2018. Could well be delayed. That's, you know, there's plenty of time for that. But, you know, it looks like something, we saw gameplay of it. It looks like something that has been in development for at least a while now. So yeah, pumped for that. Can't wait. Next up, we saw Marvel vs. Capcom, another fighting game. Obviously, the Marvel universe versus the Capcom universe. I'm not a huge fighting fan myself, just not really a genre that appeals to me. But it looked great from what we saw. You had Dante, you had Mega Man. I mean, I think if you're a fighting fan on the PS4, then this is definitely something to be intrigued by. I loved the ending where Rocket Raccoon showed up and took Dante's pistols, ebony and ivory. So yeah, again, I don't have a huge amount to add to that, but it looks very solid. I liked the trailer. I liked Rocket Raccoon. So yeah, if you're a fighting fan, keep an eye out for this. Next up, we got to see Call of Duty World War II. Now, I have to admit, when it comes to the Call of Duty franchise, I have fond memories of playing the original Modern Warfare, then Modern Warfare 2, World at War, Modern Warfare 3, but like a lot of gamers, I have become fatigued by the franchise. You know, I know it's still incredibly popular, but let's be honest, they're very similar. You know, they follow a formula very closely, and I have to say, the last Call of Duty game I played I played properly was Black Ops 2, and then I didn't play Ghost. I sort of dipped my toe into Advanced Warfare, mainly just to see Kevin Spacey, because who doesn't want to see that guy being evil? And I haven't played Infinite Warfare. I haven't, to be honest, heard really great things about it. Like, it's fine, but I've always found that the more futuristic Call of Duty gets, the less interested I am in it. I just, it doesn't appeal to me. I prefer more boots on the ground gameplay. So you can imagine that after having not played a Call of Duty title for a couple of years now, I'm very intrigued by World War II. It's clear, I don't know, you know, this is speculation, but I think maybe they saw how successful Battlefield 1 was and, you know, decided they'd go back to that era. But I'm really glad to see that, you know, we had good times in the futuristic Call of Duties, but I think it's time to go back now, and I'm definitely intrigued. I find that era of history very interesting. Obviously, it will be gamey, you know, this isn't going to be an exact representation of what it was like, because, you know, it's crazy Call of Duty, but I definitely, it's an era that intrigues me, and for that alone, I'm interested to see what they have in store for us. It looks to me like the graphics have improved a lot in what we saw from the gameplay trailers. Most Call of Duties over the past few years, you know, have been pretty enough, but seem to run on the same engine and, you know, are kind of interchangeable. Whereas this one, obviously with the period setting, looks very distinct, but also graphically, I thought it looked a lot better than what we've seen in a while. So I don't know if they have improved the engine or changed it, but it definitely looked good, and yeah, I think this could be the Call of Duty that kind of brings back old fans to the fold rather than just catering to new fans. As I say, I look forward to seeing what it does with its settings. Will it feature real battles from history? I assume so. I mean, we don't know exactly what area of the war or period it's set in. It seems like it might follow several characters across different fronts. I would personally love to see them do D-Day landings. That's something we've done in video games before, but not since the PS2 era now have we played a D-Day landing. And with the new power of current consoles, I mean, I think that could be really impressive, really epic, really done well. As excited as I am for it, I hope that they keep in mind that this was a real war where people died and horrific things happened to both soldiers and civilians. And, you know, I feel like Battlefield wasn't always totally respectful in some of the things that you did, but I felt like at all times it was kept in mind that, you know, people really died in World War One, and I hope that Activision, you know, shows a nod of respect towards the fact that World War II was such a horrific time in history. But, you know, I look forward to seeing how they handle that. Looks like we'll be shooting Nazis again. Will the campaign feature German soldier characters? Will we see the war from their perspective? These are all questions we'll find out in the near future, but yeah, definitely interested in this one. Looking forward to it. Then Sony showed off some upcoming VR games they've got in the pipeline, no doubt to support the PlayStation VR, which I believe has been done quite well. You know, VR still is very much not in the mainstream, but I think Sony have definitely been pushing it, and people have been embracing it, I'd say. It is still too pricey for my blood. I haven't tried VR yet. I really want to try VR. I can't imagine how cool it is, but, you know, I just can't afford to throw $300 at a headset at the moment. But we saw Skyrim VR again. Skyrim at E3, 6-year-old game. I love Skyrim, but it's 6 years old, and you know, I'd love my first VR experience to be wandering through Skyrim, a place that I've been through so many times on screens. I'd love to be in there, you know, and kill dragons. So that looks good. I think people will definitely flock to that. We saw something called Star Child. There wasn't a lot of information on that, but again, another title that definitely looks good. We saw The Inpatient, a horror VR game. I think horror is where VR could really excel because it really gets your blood pumping, could really terrify you. So hopefully The Inpatient lives up to that. We saw the Final Fantasy fishing game. I'm kind of a Final Fantasy noob. The recent Final Fantasy 15 was my first Final Fantasy game. I know, terrible. But I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the fishing in it. So I've got to say, if I had a VR headset and I saw that, I might well try it out. I'm certainly not going to go fishing in real life, can't be bothered. We also saw Bravo Team, which appears to be like VR Call of Duty, from what the trailer showed, essentially. Now, I think that could be really popular if they pull that off and play their cards right. I think people would really flock to that. Kind of makes me wonder why Call of Duty hasn't embraced VR yet, because I think that would sell gangbusters. That could do very well if done right. And then finally we saw something called Moss, which looked adorable. I didn't really see how it was VR, because it all seemed to be in third person, but it was a cute little mouse thing with a little sword, and I could see that being very popular among kids. Like, there aren't a lot of kids VR games, and I feel like that could definitely be a title that like adult gamers get and show their kids. And yeah, I think that definitely looks like one to watch. And VR generally, I think, you know, it's clear they're working on it, and yeah, I hope VR does get into the mainstream, and I'd love to see a little price drop on the VR headset so I could get one. But yeah, I'm still waiting for like a great VR game to come out that I can play and gives me an excuse to get VR, because at the moment it seems more like an experience. But hopefully, you know, Sony seems to be on it. Let's hope we see a really great VR game come out soon. Then Sony showed off a gameplay trailer for the new God of War, which was again announced at last year's E3, and to me looks really good. I enjoyed the original God of War series back on like the PS2 and PS3. It was incredibly satisfying, you know, really violent, but the combat was so tight, you know, you felt powerful, you felt like Kratos. But one criticism I have of it was that Kratos was just like a massive dick. Like, he just killed anything that came in his path. Like, there was no real rhyme or reason to his story. I didn't feel like his vengeance was kind of earned. It was just like, he's Kratos, he's angry, you know. Whereas this time around, you know, in a post The Last of Us world, it seems like they're really aiming to have a story alongside intense kind of action, and that action is definitely still there. I mean, from the gameplay, the combat you saw, I mean, it looks brutal, and you've still got mythical creatures to fight, but also he's got a son now. It looks like there's going to be a more touching story. I can buy the idea of Kratos willing to go to great lengths of violence because his son's in danger. It seems justified this time around. So yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by it. It looks beautiful. A lot of people have been calling it Dad of War. If that's the case, then when I'm a dad, I hope I have a dad bod that good. I mean, he's kept in shape, let's be honest. He's got a great beard game going on now. I think I've set a trend. It appears that Kratos has left Greece and is now in kind of Scandinavia, and he's been embracing the world of the Norse gods. And at the end of the trailer, that giant snake is called the World Eater from Norse mythology. If you noticed, his axe kind of acted like Thor's hammer from the Marvel films. He could like throw it and then it would just come back into his hand. And if you could see, the head of the axe kind of glowed. I wonder if that's meant to be like the hammer of Thor in some way, kind of akin to that. But I really like the vibe. I think it's great. I think they've done a good... If it was, you know, ancient Greece again, it's like we've just trod over that so many times. I look forward to seeing, you know, kind of Nordic coat of paint over it and seeing Kratos explore this new world. And why is he there? I assume it's something to do with his son, who can apparently speak to the gods. Yeah, it looks like the story could be really interesting this time around. And I think, you know, not only is it slightly more mature, it seems now, but also it will also cater to people who just loved going apeshit as Kratos. But now there's kind of more reason and rhyme to it. Then we saw Destiny 2. Now, I think I'm the only gamer in the world who didn't buy the original Destiny. Never have. I remember, I think it was like 2 E3s ago, Destiny was, all the rage, everyone was anticipating it, and Sony came on and went, there's an alpha out now for you to download and play. I downloaded and played it to see what the fuss was about, and honestly, it just didn't appeal to me on any level. Maybe I was just feeling fatigued by first-person shooters at the time, but at no point since Destiny has come out have I felt compelled to pick it up and try it. I've never played the proper game. And I have to say, Destiny 2 isn't doing anything to intrigue me. It just kind of feels like more of the same, really, to me. Perhaps with more story and a bit more depth. The original Destiny didn't quite live up to the hype, I think, even among people who liked it. Don't get me wrong, if you love Destiny, if that's your thing, then enjoy. I hope Destiny 2 is even better than the first. But yeah, like I say, I'm no Destiny expert. I don't have a lot to add, to be honest, on Destiny. Sony then finished off its conference by showing us extended gameplay of the upcoming Spider-Man title, which, as I've said, again, was originally shown at last year's E3, at the end of last year's E3, I think. And, I mean, it looks fantastic. It looks like they're doing for Spider-Man what Rocksteady did for Batman with the Arkham games. It looks gorgeous. The web slinging looks really fluid and fun. It looks like this is a game that, will allow fans to live out their fantasies of being Spider-Man. And I think with the upcoming Spider-Man Homecoming film coming out in a few months, it feels like Spider-Man's really primed and ready to kind of become the #1 superhero for now. I've got to say, I was slightly concerned about all the quick time events, QTEs. I'm not a fan of them in general, and I hope this game doesn't rely on them too much. When I do something cool as Spider-Man, when I pull something cool off, I want it to be because of my skill, not because I just pressed a button at the correct time when I was prompted on screen. So I don't mind a few of them here and there, but I really hope it doesn't over-rely on them. But I think it looks great, and I look forward to seeing more, what villains we're going to face. I hope we get to go toe-to-toe against some classic Spider-Man villains. I hope we see some classic characters, Uncle Ben, Mary Jane, Aunt May, Harry Osborn. I used to love Spider-Man when I was a kid, and if I'd seen this trailer when I was a kid, I'd blow my nut. I really hope this is as fun to play as it was to watch. And, I hope it lives up to the Spider-Man 2 game back on the PS2, because to my mind that was the best Spider-Man game. It had fantastic web slinging, and I hope they look at that and incorporate what was good about it into this upcoming Spider-Man game. That was everything Sony had to show at this year's E3. I thought it was strong, but at the same time I couldn't help feeling there were some things I was expecting from them that didn't appear. For instance, we didn't see any of The Last of Us 2, which was announced late last year. A lot of people were expected to see maybe some gameplay or at least a new trailer. We didn't see anything from that. A lot of people have been thinking we may have seen some more Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy footage or something. It comes out in less than a month. It feels like it just would have made sense for them to show some of that, just a quick trailer or something, just to remind people that's very near. I'm surprised we didn't see anything from them. Sucker Punch. People were expecting Sucker Punch to come out and show a new project they're working on. They made most recently the Infamous games, Infamous Second Son, which was, I think it might have been, no, I don't think it was a launch title for the PS4, but it came out very early in the PS4's life cycle and really showed off what it could do graphics wise and such. And I really enjoyed that game, and I was hoping we might see Sucker Punch announce what they're working on next, but we didn't. A lot of people were hoping that From Software might announce their new IP they seem to be working on, or there's been rumours of Bloodborne 2. I loved Bloodborne, it's one of my favourite PS4 games, so I would have loved to see Bloodborne 2 announced. We don't even know if it exists, but it would have been great if it had appeared. But From Software didn't appear at all. They didn't show anything about a new Bloodborne or a completely new IP or anything Dark Souls related. The only explanation I have for why these things weren't present is I wonder if Sony is holding back some announcements for PlayStation Experience later this year. That is essentially PlayStation's own version of E3, where it's all PlayStation centred. So, it would make sense if Sony wants to hold some things back in order to have some cool announcements for PlayStation Experience. But overall, I thought it was a good conference. I'm excited. It seems like there's lots of great games coming up. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what Nintendo have in store.